Now let's take a moment to talk about child abuse and neglect, a subject none of us really want to talk about, but it's vitally important, especially if you work in an industry where you might be mandated to be a reporter of abuse or neglect, and we're going to cover that next. First, let's find out a little bit of background about this subject. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families, child abuse and neglect is one of the nation's most serious concerns. During 2008, an estimated 772,000 children were determined to be victims of abuse or neglect. Now, the majority of these victims, which is around 71%, were sufferers of neglect, while 16% suffered physical abuse, 9% was sexual abuse, and 7% suffered psychological abuse. Now, depending on your state laws, you may actually have a legal requirement to report suspected abuse as a mandated reporter. This requirement often includes teachers, daycare providers, EMS workers, coaches, camp staff, as well as other professionals. Let's talk about abuse. Abuse can occur in child care centers, schools, religious institutions, recreational and athletic programs, not to exclude camps, residential facilities, and the worst part, even at home. The most predominant type of abuse would be neglect, followed by physical abuse and then sexual abuse. Neglect is something that means that despite available resources, the parent fails to provide food and clothing, shelter, supervision, or does not seek medical attention for serious illness or injury. And this can happen for a number of reasons, but a family crisis such as a job loss or serious illness to the caregiver or divorce. Neglect also results from chaotic households and no structure or routines, or their homes may have very little space for the child. Some indicators might be that the child looks undernourished and is usually hungry. They may be often lethargic and the child hasn't slept well. Chronically, they have injuries that you can attribute to a lack of supervision, including being harmed by other people. They might be beggars for food because of persistent hunger. They have noticeably poor hygiene. They're inappropriately dressed for the weather. Frequent accidents and injuries. They have the poor ability to relate to others. They have poor self-esteem. Maybe they have attachment difficulties, or they have social problems and reduced pro-social behaviors. Maybe they have an inability to say no to inappropriate requests. So these are all different ways we can start to look at neglect and notice that there's a problem.